thank you for being here today, this NLISN event. And I have great pleasure in introducing you to Amelia Haire. So, Amelia, is it okay to hand over to you? And if you could share your screen, if that's okay.
Yes.
Lovely.
Please let me know if you can see it as well.
That's
Yeah.
lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Amazing. So firstly, hi everyone. I never thought I'd get more than 30 people at a push coming today. So to have over 200 people sign up was absolutely crazy, but I think it really shows how important this is for people that it is important to talk about the autistic experience of libraries. What I will do is I'm going to first just ask you about, oh, actually, where's that gone? There we go. Sorry, we do have a couple of technical things happening. There we go. So I'll just make an official start. My name is Amelia Haire. I am the secretary for NLISN. I became the secretary a couple of months into my master's at UCL in Library and Information Studies, which I completed in September just gone. And this presentation is a culmination of my dissertation research, which was named "What Does It Mean to Be Information Literate for an Autistic Person Working in the Academic Library Workplace?" So if this wants to work, there we go. So first I'm going to give a little bit of context into myself and why I undertook this research. In true autistic fashion, I believe in understanding the context first and having a bottom-up approach to processing. Then I'm going to talk about the literature, or really lack thereof, concerning autistic librarians. Then we'll move on to the how, so the different methods. And then we're going to talk about my findings, which will be put into 3 different sections. We've got epistemic, social, and physical. And the why there is 3 sections will be explained further when we go into it. And then we'll go into implications and further research. There will be time for questions at the end. If you think that you're in danger of forgetting a question, as I would be if I didn't write it down, please do put it in the chat. Sue and Maria are going to be monitoring the chat, and we can try and answer everyone's questions at the end as well. So let's get into it. So we've got the why. So I got my autistic diagnosis 3 months before I started my master's in library and information studies. I knew that I'd been autistic for a while, but I never actually got the diagnosis until I worked in a public library. I then got my ADHD diagnosis a few months into my MA, around the same time that NLISN started. So with the diagnosis comes, as it happens for so many, comes a hyper focus on autism and what it means to be a female autistic ADHDer working in libraries. So it's just a little bit niche. I have experience working in public, specialist and academic libraries, and I'm currently working at Senate House Library, which I absolutely love. Something that started was that I noticed whilst working in these different libraries, and again, I have no medical expertise, but something I really believe is that there is a higher percentage of autistic people in the library population than there is in the general population. I think especially when you consider the statistics about autistic people who are in full-time education as well. Lots of autistic people in libraries. So first we go on to my research questions, and the first one that I investigated is, what does it mean to be information literate? So as I've mentioned, I did my master's at UCL, and I was lucky enough to take the module led by Dr. Alison Hicks, who would then become my supervisor for my dissertation. And we did the module Information Literacy. And in this, we discuss what does it mean to be information literate. So there are tens, maybe even hundreds of definitions of what it means to be information literate. But this is the one that I like the most. This is by SCONL, so the Society of College, National and University Libraries. And it talks about how information literate people would demonstrate an awareness of how they gather, use, manage, synthesize, and create information and data in an ethical manner, and will have the information skills to do so respectively. So I think as well that the emphasis here, which is my own, is gathering, using, managing, synthesizing, and creating information is something that I think would be a bit different for an autistic person. I think we are getting a lot more information in our everyday than perhaps a neurotypical person would. So what about being information literate in the workplace? So in this module that I just was talking about, we looked at Anne-Marie Lloyd's model for becoming information literate. And that bit in the middle there, the information environment, is informed by the social modalities, the physical modalities, and the epistemic and instrumental modalities. So these are the three things that will inform your information environments. They inform what you understand about your everyday. And I think for me, that is what would be different because, excuse me, we've got the textual, social, physical, and sensory sources, and they're going to be different for an autistic person. When you look at the diagnostic criteria for an autistic person, it would be communication issues. And again, we could move into the stereotypical here. People think that being autistic means that you take everything literally, that you can't understand facial expressions and that you don't understand small talk. And that is true to an extent. You kind of learn to an extent how to do it, and it's not fun, but you do it. And autistic people will be hypo or hypersensitive to physical surroundings. So we either feel things very, very intensely or not at all. I knew an autistic person who could put his hand in boiling water and not feel it, whereas I can hear every single conversation going on around me because I have hypersensitive ears. Finally, there's processing differences for an autistic person. Personally, I believe that is because we are processing so much more information than a neurotypical person. So this is where I started to think, okay, so if these are the key points of becoming information literate, the gathering, the managing, and the synthesizing, and we're going to be managing the epistemic, the social, and the physical and gathering differently, then what does it mean? And what do other people think about being neurodivergent in the workplace? And this is where I had a lot of freedom in my research because there isn't a lot of research about particularly autism in library workers. There's a lot about patrons and helping patrons, but as Alice Eng says in their 2017 interview, why do you think there is so little literature about the neurodiversity of librarians? So these are a couple of quotes that I actually found when I was doing my research, and to summarize them, there's a lot of research about autistic children in the library or an autistic patron. So there's things like social stories or sensory maps, which are brilliant tools, and I would really recommend using them, but they are often geared towards children. They can be quite almost condescending, I suppose, as a way to put it. So another thing is this quote by Lawrence, and they say that the reported desires and wants of autistic are rarely, if ever, considered, because it is misguidedly believed that everything one needs to know about autistics can be inferred from their medical classification. And I actually, when I quote that, I noticed that I talk a lot more slowly, and that's because it is really poignant to me in that a lot of people, a lot of the research doesn't actually ask autistic people what their thoughts are. It doesn't get direct quotes from them. It says, this is the medical diagnosis, so this must be how autistic people experience the workplace. So this is why I kind of went, okay, well, then I'm going to ask people and I'm going to get people's opinions. And to do this, I did a survey and an interview. As I say, I am the secretary for NLISN, so I had an incredible group of neurodivergent librarians an email away to help me. So I sent out the link to the survey and a plea for help. And at the time of writing, I believe we had 93 people in the network. Bearing in mind that NLISN doesn't just accept autistic librarians, we have ADHDers, we have OCD, we have Tourette's, we have dyspraxia, all the different neurodivergencies. And to have 43 responses within that was just incredible. So it was just under half, I believe, I got responses from. We had questions ranging from drop down, so for example, completely agree to completely disagree, or free text, because I wanted to get a range of data. I wanted to get tables, I wanted to get people's opinions. And then we had different sections for each modality. So we had the epistemic, the social, the physical, and then we also had one for onboarding, because I believe that's when you're taking in the most information. This is when you're desperately trying to understand what's going on around you. You're desperately trying to understand what people expect of you and what you should expect of them. I then used the data from the survey to inform my interview questions. The last question of the survey was, would you be willing to take part in an interview? I had 3 people say, I had a couple more than 3 people, but I chose 3 people to interview, and unfortunately one of them had to drop out because of other commitments. But that actually turned out to be advantageous, because I had so much data by the end of it that I think if I had a third person, I would have been completely overwhelmed in the time period. So I had 2 interviews. I did the guided interview approach. So this is basically where you write down a set of questions, you send it to the participants beforehand. I believe I sent it out about 24 hours beforehand. And that basically gives the participants a chance to process the questions, talk about what they might want to talk about, and but then when it comes down to it, you can ask other questions if it comes up. We had, as I say, 2 interviews. One of them was 30 minutes, the other one was 90 minutes. So again, a range of everything, but it was absolutely brilliant because the data that came out of it was just amazing. So from this, we'll go on to my findings. So again, I put these into 3 different sections. We have the epistemic, the social, and the physical. So the epistemic refers to the preference to the written word, which I believe is particularly poignant for autistic people. I know personally it is for me. Then we have the social aspect, and that's going to be talking about translation and translation of information. And then we've got the physical, where we talk about the really fun sensory challenges that autistic people face every single day. So when we talk about epistemic, which is talking about the written word, it's about having instructions. I was particularly interested in this because I know that if I have someone telling me what to do, I'm not going to remember it unless it's written, because I have so many other things going on that I don't have time to process it. So when it talk about onboarding and the ways information is socially transmitted in her new workplace, and I'm quoting here, if those ways are unnecessarily complicated, it becomes more difficult for the new person to do their job. And that's a quote from Galusis. And so if you are getting all of these different gathering and managing all of this information, it's going to be hard for things to stick. So having it written down means you can go back to it, you can add your own notes, that kind of thing. And the people who took part in the survey really agreed with me. I should probably say right now that all of my tables are pretty clear cut, like this one. There is a clear preference most of the time. So this is the question: do you prefer receiving instructions and guidance on technical aspects of your job via in-person verbal instructions, email, guidebook, written document, and other? As you can see, the guidebook and written document was the clear winner. And I think it is very clear then. It's like, so you can go, having something you can go back to, having something that's there in front of you that won't disappear like an auditory conversation will. Talking of social and auditory processing, we then move on to the active translation. So this was something that really came up again and again, is that there is, annoyingly, because it does feed into the stereotype, that there is a communication difference here for autistic people. And that is that we are constantly translating or trying to translate the neurotypical conversation around us. So for my participants particularly, the main social difficulty is not understanding what's behind the words, or they'll tell me a load of irrelevant stuff and I've got to take that and translate it into a process. Finally, and this is quite poignant to me right now, when I present, it tends to be much shorter, much more concise. Just tell me what you want and we'll do it. This was quite clear to me when I did a presentation in December, and mine was significantly shorter than the others because I answered the question, I showed my methods, and that was that. So mine was, I think it was something like 5 minutes shorter than everyone else's, but I still got what I wanted to say out there. So the main point is that there's a lot of stuff to wade through in normal conversation. There's social convention, social niceties, and it's hard to translate it if you don't understand where that starts and where the actual point of a meeting begins. How do you know what's social convention? How do you know what is actually important to the conversation? So something that autistic people is always translating all of this flowery language to try and find what someone is asking them to do in the middle of it. I know for me, that can be quite difficult sometimes. This goes back to having the epistemic being quite important as well. And that is the question, do you feel there are unwritten rules for your workplace that it took you longer to understand than your neurotypical colleagues? And these two at the top, they're the ones that are strongly agree and somewhat agree. So as I told you, we've got some clear-cut graphs here. And again, it's these unwritten rules. So it's why are people doing these social niceties? Why do we need exactly 5 minutes of small talk before we actually get to the main bit of the meeting? Why can't we talk about this? Or why must we talk about this? And if there was a rule book, that would be great. But sometimes people don't know why they're doing this. A lot of the time, you just do it because that's what you're taught to do. It's a social convention. But that creates a lot of stuff to try and translate, try and understand. And I think this sums up the autistic experience quite well. There are workplace dynamics, expectations, which people can't really explain or define clearly. There's an expectation that I will just know things or get a vibe. Now, when you're extremely good at pattern recognition, all you get are vibes because you're applying previous data to the thing in front of you. And if you're doing that and trying to work out social conventions at the same time or work out what's relevant to you, how are you supposed to manage and synthesize that information around you? Finally, we're going to move on to the physical. And this quote is, I think, one of my favorites. I think it really resonates. It's like if you were pouring water over a neurotypical person's head while explaining something, and they have to pay attention, and also they have to pretend not to notice the water. I think this really, really tells people how overwhelming physical stuff can be. I know for me, as I've said, it's auditory. It does feel sometimes like you are drowning in a wave of noise, and you can't differentiate between them. So sometimes it is really hard to just hear what someone's telling you because you can hear everything else as well. And it's not just me that feels this, thankfully, I suppose. If you're feeling overstimulated or understimulated by your environment, does it become harder to take in or understand information given to you? That bar at the top is strongly agree. So I think it's quite clear. but as I've said, for me, it is auditory, but for other people, it can be anything. This bar chart explains what physical aspects of your workplace environment affect you. First one is noise levels, so like me. Second one is temperature. Again, a big thing. Ideal better in winter, let's put it at that. And then smells. I actually, in the public library when I worked there, found it quite difficult with smells. I had a really lovely patron who actually made me lavender bags and would come up to me with lavender bags if because she knew that I struggled sometimes, which is incredible. It's so lovely. Finally, we had the other. And the biggest thing for other was fluorescent lights. They are the bane of people's lives. I don't think people could communicate that strongly enough. They make noises, they hurt your eyes, they give you headaches, they are horrible. I know a lot of places are actually trying to phase out fluorescent lights. So, I mean, if your workplace has the means to, please do it. They're horrible. No one likes them. Finally, this is a quote from one of my interview participants, and I think it resonates not just with autistic people, but with neurotypical people too. And it's, I'm like a little swan paddling below. There's the waterline, and I look very serene above it. And below, I'm just going like this. And she made very frantic paddling motions, and it was brilliant. I think this kind of talks about masking quite a lot. Everyone has a mask on. Neurotypical people have their mask, and for high masking autistic people, you'd never know that they weren't neurotypical. I'm very high masking. There's only certain times that you'd know that I was autistic. But underneath this is happening a lot. And I like this as well because it shows the flapping that can happen when I get overexcited as well. So finally, and this is a little bit of a sad slide, just a little warning for people, and it's, do you feel isolated due to not understanding social relationships, hierarchies, communication in the workplace? And again, those top two bars are strongly agree and somewhat agree. So when you are the only one in your sphere that can't understand what's going on, that is constantly taking in all of this information, it is really isolating when people are going out on social events to connect with each other, and you can't do that because you're so exhausted from masking every single day, or know that going to the bar and having the loud noises and having people talk to you whilst trying to work out what's the right way to behave in this situation, that's exhausting. And I think that it can be really isolating, and I didn't put it on here because it can be upsetting, but a lot of my participants have experienced bullying because they are autistic, and it really affected all of them. They've had some really awful experiences, and this is why I think this kind of research is really important. If you understand what's going on, then you can utilise the workforce in a better way and actually make people happier, which is always a great thing as well. So now we go off the sad bit. With this, I was talking about the challenges and what it means to be information literate. And to put it simply, my answer is that it is going to be different to become information literate for an autistic person, because we are gathering so much information. We are synthesizing all of this information around us, and we're doing this every minute of the day. But I think this is what makes us such brilliant librarians. I think that is why so many autistic people are drawn to the library profession, because, again, this might sound a bit stereotypical, but there's pattern recognition. Autistic people are brilliant at recognizing patterns. For example, when it comes to me, in my workplace, we do something called quality checks, where we check accounts that have been created that day, and we check that they adhere to guidelines, that kind of thing. I can process about 100 plus in the space of 5 to 10 minutes because of this pattern recognition, because I notice when the pattern doesn't work. It will be something like, there's an 8 rather than 7. Aha. Next, there's usually a methodical or logical approach to the data. As I've said, small talk and flowery language makes things slower. So to just focus on what you need to do and do it means that we're very efficient. And finally, I think what a big point of my dissertation is that we are always translating. We are always translating the information around us. We are always translating what we can hear, what we can smell, and what people are telling us. And we are furthermore, it's like if everyone else is talking in a different language, so you're constantly translating what's in front of you. So with that, ways in which you could help your autistic colleagues, I think this is a happy slide, is consider having written guides of what you should expect of them and what they should expect of you. What do you want them to do in very clear, uncertain terms? When do you want it by? And how would you like them? Sometimes, how would you like them to do it? If you're happy for them to do it in their own way, great. If you'd like it set out in a certain way, communicate that in no uncertain terms. Secondly, ask what they need, ask what they will need if they're feeling, I call it when I'm feeling sensory to my colleagues. I'm very lucky in that I have colleagues who listen to me and ask me what I need. And if I do say, I'm feeling sensory right now, they give me space and they give me a quiet moment, or they give me a job that requires being quiet. Let them stim. I currently have 2 fidget rings on. I have a mug that has a fidget on. I will constantly be singing, or I will be dancing, and that is me stimming. It's me trying to offload the pressure of having all of this sensory stuff going on around me and letting my body process it. If it's not causing anyone any distress, if it's not distracting anyone in a big way, just let them do it. Let someone have a little dance. Let someone have a little this. It's great. And then finally, if you could change from fluorescent lights, that would be great. If that's all someone takes from this, please change the fluorescent lights, please. Okay, and that is me. If anyone has any questions, I think Sue and Maria, you said that you would be able to field them. But thank you, everyone, for coming so much. It's so amazing.
Thank you, Amelia. That was brilliant. There are some questions that have come through in the chat. So I'll go through those ones first. And then if anybody else would like to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand. I'll be able to see the number that your hand is raised in, and I'll invite you to unmute. And then if you want to add any other questions in the chat, that's fine. So the first question was around your methods. So what were the other methods that folks preferred to receive technical instruction by? So I think that's going back to the slide that showed the different methods.
So for me, I like things but via email. I think something that I can print out and make notes on, and also something that you can just refer back to again. So if someone's taken notes for a meeting, someone's taken the minutes, having them available as well is really important. Basically, just something that you can refer to. Again, something that you can read through and think, I didn't notice that in the moment because I was listening to someone else, or something like that.
And I think, was it very small for verbal instructions on your slide as well? Your findings found it's very small for that, didn't they?
I think, again, if you're constantly, I know I have a tendency to talk fast. I have a tendency, my brain works faster than my mouth. So there will be things miscommunicated when you're processing verbally. So having it written down is really important as well.
Thank you. The second question was a little, not necessarily related to your research. It was, what made you seek an autistic diagnosis? So I suppose it's up to you whether you want to answer that or not.
Yeah, that's all right. One thing about me is that I am open to a fault. I probably share too much. I experienced what I thought were panic attacks at least once a day for about 6 years whilst I was in secondary school. What I then found is that they were actually meltdowns, which are when the sensory things become too much. My body can't process them, and my body needs a way to get it out. And so that is what it looks like, a panic attack. More often, I noticed that I have something that is quite colloquially termed hyperlexia. I read extraordinarily fast and I process written information very, very fast. And that's something that can be quite common for autistic people as well. And I have an extremely heightened sense of justice. If I think something's wrong and that someone's doing it wrong, I will tell them. And I find it a bit hard to watch people do something that I think is wrong. So these are all quite stereotypical autistic traits. So things like that came across. I have family members as well who are autistic, who got diagnosed 14, 16 years before me. And so other members of my family then got diagnosed with ADHD. And we all looked at me and went, I know a lot of people actually get the diagnosis after their children have been diagnosed as well. That gets a lot of people their diagnosis.
Thank you for sharing that, Amelia. I'm sure that's really useful to people. Going back slightly to the written instructions, there's a question about secondary reasons for the preference for written documentation around being autodidactic learners. And do you think that part of the preferences around these are then aligning with those autodidactic preferences, as well as wanting to sort of be able to almost like control the information processing element, getting away from distractions, too much information and things like that?
Ooh, okay. So I think so. I think being autodidactic is something that is quite common with autistic people again. There's also, I think there's a preference to want to, as you say, to control that flow of information. It could be due to stress, or it could be due to other things, but you will want to control, because how else are you supposed to take in information if not the way that you take it in personally? I think that kind of is a brief answer to the question, because I'm trying very hard to not go too far into it.
Thank you. Now, this is an interesting question that I don't think we've picked up on too much in the findings so far. Were there any comments or findings when it's the autistic colleagues who are sharing the information rather than receiving the information? So was there anything in your findings related to that element, and then sort of preferences there?
I had both of the interview participants, we talked about how they present information in presentations, and both of them have said that it's shorter, basically. To put it, it's more concise. The question is answered, and it's this, this, and this is why. So I think there's a tendency to not have all the flowery language. However, one thing I did realise is that just because someone is neurodiverse does not mean that they are going to get on and be exactly the same as another neurodiverse person. There's the quote, and it's just because you've met one, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person. The way that my brain goes through things and the way that I have processed something to the way I want to present is going to be completely different to how another neurodivergent person is going to want to present something, because we will have focused on different elements here. So I think it's again a focusing on what you want to have as well.
Thank you. And I think this next question follows on a little bit from that. So thinking about what you said as being concise, and someone in the chat's used the phrasing being direct, which I think in this context is very similar. And they're asking, how can that element of being concise and direct be reframed as being efficient and positive, rather than being perceived as aggressive or rude from non-autistic people, and they've just said that they've experienced that. And I think if anyone else in the room has sort of experienced that, feel free to share your experiences in the chat, as well as Amelia.
It's quite. I've just seen on the chat as well, someone say that I tend to go on for longer. I tend to worry I've mistranslated the question. And I think that is a way to direct away from being seen as aggressive and direct, is that you'll over-explain yourself. My partner often tells me to stop over-explaining myself, because I'm trying to do that so I don't appear aggressive or bossy. So I'm over-explaining constantly. I have to give a reason as to why I'm asking someone. I have a tendency as I say, in Senate House, we've got marble walls. It's a beautiful historic building, but that means that all the noise is echoed. So if I'm trying to help a member with a membership query or something, I can also hear every person's phone conversation around me. So what I tend to do is ask people to not go on the phone. But what I do is I say, please, could you not be on your phone? And then I start to go into an over explanation, and I go, oh, it's a bit hard for us to hear. It starts to echo, and it's that kind of thing. It's worrying that people are going to misunderstand you, worrying that they're going to be annoyed at you as well. Masking is often a lot of people pleasing as well, I think, particularly for women as well. I've seen there's a couple of questions about gender representation. One of the things that I got asked in my first job was that I need to stop nodding as people talk. Apparently women in particular, if you present as a woman, you go like this while someone's talking, and that's your way of showing that they've understood. But people often will take it that you're automatically agreeing with everything they said, when you're just saying, yes, I've heard you.
Thank you. Now, this is a non-presentation related question. Ooh. Please, can you share some more information about your mug and where it's from?
Amazing. It was actually a Christmas present from my boyfriend's sister and mum. I wish I knew where it was from, because it's brilliant. I mean, I think it's from Typo. It says on the bottom there. I mean, I would highly recommend it. It's got, if I become an influencer for a moment, we've got the little frog there, because I've got a little frog under my desk that helps me work. If I don't want to work, I look at the frog. So Typo, I think it's from.
Thank you very much. For anyone interested, if somebody could try and look it up online and post the link. A question going back to sort of the initial bit where you were talking about information literacy models and Anne-Marie Lloyd's model. Could you tell us a little bit more about where understanding instruction in the workplace fits into sort of information literacy models?
Yeah. So the key part of understanding what makes up being information literate in the workplace is how you use, and then how you gather, how you get it around, and then how you use it. So in the workplace, what you're gathering, what you're managing is all the new aspects of your job. You're learning how to use a new program. You're learning how to get to the loo, or where the kettle is, or things like that. You're going to be learning different things, and the way that you understand where you sit in the team, in the larger team, in regard to the hierarchy, in regard to your manager, those are all ways of being information literate to your workplace. If you misunderstand something, then there might be issues where you thought you were in the hierarchy. You might be higher, you might be lower. And as we all find out with the workplace hierarchy, it's how you talk to the people below you, the people higher than you in the hierarchy. So it's all about your how you have interpreted the information and how you use it, how you want to use it, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think that does make sense. Now there's two questions come in so far that I've spotted related to gender, so I'll just sort of share both of them with you, because I think they interlink a little bit. So have you noticed any gender-based differences within the research? And there's a specific example given where like a neurotypical male colleague might be very blunt and direct, and an autistic woman is blunt and direct, and it's seen as acceptable for that neurotypical male, but not the autistic female.
Yeah.
And then the second one was related to this dominance of women within the library sector and the underdiagnosis of women diagnosed autistic maybe sort of earlier on, and whether there's a sort of a lack of recognition related to this gender imbalance and things like that.
Oh, yeah. So this is actually something that I did start to go into in my dissertation. There's a statistic about, I think that it is like 70% of library workers are female, but that the proportion of men in management positions are still higher in the library system. And I wonder if so many neurodivergent women are going to libraries because it is such a brilliant profession for an autistic woman. I know that by talking about my autistic experience with other women in the workplace, they've suddenly started thinking, oh, that resonates with me, actually. Let me go and see what I need, what my sensory needs might be. I think there's definitely the thing of if a man is direct and blunt, then he's being a good manager and he's telling everyone and he's being assertive. But if a woman's doing the same thing, then she's rude and that she's not over explaining herself. So how will people know what she means? I think that is a thing, and I think I would love to believe that that's changing as time goes on, as we start to understand neurodiversity post-COVID. I think that is actually a big thing. I think a lot of people got diagnosed during COVID and are starting to understand themselves more. And one thing that if you start to accommodate neurodivergent people, you'll be accommodating neurotypical people at the same time. If you have a more inclusive workplace, it means it's more inclusive for everyone, not just the neurodivergent people.
Thank you. A quick question, if you could just give a bit more of an in-depth explanation about what stimming is, just a bit more of a definition there.
Yeah, so stimming is one of the big things for me that, again, I didn't notice I was doing until I was diagnosed. So stimming, I believe, I can never remember what it refers to. It's like stimulating your nervous system. Basically, it's an action. So in TV series, I hate to talk about the stereotypical thing, but if you think about the stereotypical autistic male, then there's someone doing this in it. There's someone flapping. And that flapping is something that you're doing with your body in order to relax your nervous system. I think there's a lot of stuff if anyone's done CBT therapy, there's tapping. You do different tapping things to calm down your nervous system. And that is basically what stimming is. You're letting off that steam off your vagus nerve. You're calming yourself down by doing different actions, repetitive actions usually. So for me, as I say, I've got my fidget rings and I'm constantly doing this. You're looking for something to stimulate something other than your nervous system. So I go like this as well when I'm thinking. Or there's a lot of hair twirling is a big one, pulling your ear. I have had people refer to me as happy clappy if I'm really excited, because I get overexcited and I'll go like this. And I get very joyful and very overexcited, and I have a tendency to dance as well.
Thank you for that explanation. Now, just thinking about your findings and your recommendations, somebody in the chat said that they can see some real links here with universal design for learning and working with students. And they just want to know whether you think your research has any implications for how we might better support students, particularly thinking about academic and information literary skills such as research and reading and things.
I think it does. I think there is actually quite a lot of literature about how to help a neurodiverse student there. I think anything that helps one neurodivergent person will be helping another neurodivergent person because it's making things more inclusive. But I think having the language analysed, having the way that people are talking, about how the way instructions are given, about the things you should take into consideration, it might seem silly, but when I was at UCL, all of the rooms, so like I think 2 of the rooms that we had were just awful sensory wise. They gave my friend migraines whenever she was in one of the rooms. It gave me headaches because of flickering lights or because of heat or because of noise. So just even thinking about that, I think that would change how someone becomes information literate.
Great, thank you. We also have a question about whether your findings had anything about the challenges of expressing preferences. So you've talked about how people do have preferences, and did any of the participants go into a bit more detail about any sort of issues they've had when requesting that, whether it's a reasonable adjustment more formally or not, and whether they're actually having to disclose their neurodivergent status within the workplace to sort of get that?
Yeah, so it's not something that I did go into a lot. I think my research was more about highlighting your issues, and then I think I think NLISN's outputs are going to be really good for that. We had the Birmingham event about leading neurotypicals and talking about how you can express yourself, and I think finding the way to talk about it, it's unfortunately it is usually the onus of the autistic person to disclose it. It's usually on you to say, I'm autistic, I would like this please, I am autistic, I'm going to need a quiet moment. I think that it's needed, but I think there could be, I think focus on and look towards NLISN's outputs to look into, just a little bit of a call out there for NLISN, just to think about advocating for yourself, because there are some really brilliant resources out there, and I think NLISN is highlighting them. Got to get a bit of NLISN in there.
Thank you. And I suppose this question's also to anyone else who wants to sort of share in the chat as well. But do you or anybody else present find that you sort of cry uncontrollably more than neurotypicals in the workplace?
Oh, God. I have I don't tend to cry in the workplace. I have uncontrollable facial expressions. So, for example, when I worked in the public library, if there was a big smell, as there tends to be, it's a warm space, I would go like this, and I can't stop myself. So if someone did come in, there'd be times where I'd have to go to one of my colleagues and say, look, I just need a minute. And I would go into the office and I would actually bang my head. I wouldn't recommend doing this. I'd bang my head on the door till I was stimmed out enough that I could deal with it. I do have a tendency to cry more, but I don't know if that's more than my neurotypical colleagues. I've never seen them cry. But I tend to be able to hold it in until later. I also did work in hospitality, and the hospitality trade is where I did cry a lot. I think I've got all the crying out in the hospitality years, but I don't do it in the library.
Thank you for sharing that, Amelia. There's three questions, but I'll come on to sort of that last one at the end. So I think time-wise, we'll just take these sort of last two / three. So I think this question is not necessarily about you as a researcher, but maybe more of you as a research participant. So as a sort of an autistic person or neurodiverse, do you feel as though you can maintain complete anonymity, that challenged me, in surveys based on the way that you sort of put forward and share responses? So doing something like this, and I suppose you might have seen this within your findings, because it was about work-related things, were people almost unintentionally revealing where they worked and things and so on?
It was very difficult, is the main answer. And if I was going to say things like particular quotes, I had to ask that person when I would put it in a presentation or something, just to make sure it wasn't too identifiable to them if it's not something that they're known for saying. Because I think, again, it is so individual how you present as an autistic person, what you need. Again, it's so individual that it is really hard to maintain anonymity. For example, if I said the membership hall at my work is made completely of marble, there's not going to be many places that are like that. It's very hard to maintain anonymity, and it's something you have to weigh up constantly, I think.
Yeah, I think there's some value sometimes in detail, but that need to sort of balance anonymity. I'm struggling with this word today, aren't I?
We'll be able to say it one day.
So, sort of last question for yourself. Is your dissertation available for us to read in full with a really nice comment from somebody who'd love to read it and share it with their team?
Oh, thank you. I've had a couple of people ask this, actually. At the moment, it's not. I'm preparing it for a journal article at the moment, where it should be a bit more accessible than the 14,000 word document it is right now. The journal article is going to be about 8,000. And also it's probably better because after submitting my dissertation, I realised I used 2 of the wrong tables within the first 5 pages. So it will probably be better as a journal article. I will be shouting about it when it is published. It is in the works. But as I say, this recording will be put on the NLISN website, and I will be shouting about it on every social platform that I have. So something will be out there.
Thank you. And we do on the NLISN website have a resource section. And the last question was about how we join NLISN. So in the chat, both Sue Sullivan and Joanne Fitzpatrick have added some links in there to how to join. So the website that Sue Sullivan's put in is to the NLISN website, and you can see the resource list. So when things like Amelia's journal article gets published, that will get updated on the resource list. And we have an NLISN newsletter that comes around, and we highlight specific resources within there as well. And if you have a look at Joanne's message, you've got a JISCmail list, you've got a forum there. We also have a buddying scheme which you can join, and then we also have events. So we've sent out a call for speakers for our next event, which is on recruitment experiences as a neurodivergent person, and I'll be sending out within the next week or 2 some booking information if you'd like to book onto that as an attendee as well.
So exciting.
Okay, so that is the end of today's session. Thank you so much, Amelia, for sharing your research with us. It's been fascinating and really interesting. And thank you so much for the attendees. I think at most we had 121 people, which is fantastic to see. I'm going to stop the recording, and then that will be edited and just put up onto the NLISN website as well.